Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, March 8th, 2021, and we are live. It is also International Women's Day. So you see, I have my shirt on honoring great African women in history. So it's been a very busy day. We had a great show Sunday. Our show Sunday, we dealt with how Evanston, Illinois, is tackling reparations for African Americans, and they are dealing with a history of redlining. So I ended up doing almost 2.5 hours dealing with that story out of Evanston, Illinois. So be sure to go back and watch that at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and also our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, on YouTube. Okay, so on today's show, I was one of the stories that I did not get a chance to talk about on Sunday's show was our continuing coverage of what's going on in Georgia and the Georgia state legislature retaliating against African Americans for coming out in record numbers and voting for Joe Biden for president in the November 3rd presidential election, and also voting for Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff for the Senate elections. So we know that there have been a number of bills that the Georgia state legislature has proposed. And we know last Monday they passed bill number House Resolution 531, and it has to pass the Senate. And they're dealing with restricting who gets access to early vote, who gets access to mail-in ballots. Okay. So there was one article from the New York Times that deals with Georgia Republicans are taking aim at the role of Black churches in elections. Georgia Republicans are taking aim at the role of Black churches in elections. And you have civil rights groups who are saying that African American voters are the target of a lot of these new laws, trying to disenfranchise African American voters. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And this past Friday, when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered, that was Friday, March 5th. This is one of the things that we discussed, and Roland interviewed Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright from Black Voters Matter. And they were talking, they're calling on corporations that are headquartered in Atlanta to speak out on behalf of African Americans, these corporations that we spend money with, to speak out on behalf of African Americans. But some of these corporations also give donations to Republican candidates or Republican politicians who are also doing us harm. Okay, so we'll discuss that. And then we'll talk a little bit about International Women's Day. And equity is more than a call to action. Equity is more than a call to action. There was a really good article from newsone.com dealing with this. And then on Sunday's show, I did not get a chance to talk about the U.S. Senate. On Saturday, the U.S. Senate passed a $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill, the American Rescue Plan. So they passed that, and it's suspected that the House of Representatives will vote to pass it on Tuesday. Now, it passed the Senate without any Republican support. No Republicans in the Senate voted for this bill that are going to help a lot of their constituents in their respective Republican states. Okay, so we'll discuss some of that as well and what that means. And then March 8th is not just uh, International Women's Day, but March 8th is also the anniversary of the FBI's counterintelligence program being exposed. It was exposed March 8th, 1971. March 8th, 1971. COINTELPRO was exposed. So we'll talk about a little bit of the history of what happened and how the counterintelligence program that was used against Dr. King, used against Malcolm X, used against, technically, the, the counterintelligence program actually was created August 1967. So technically, wasn't the FBI was targeting Malcolm, but based upon my research of the counterintelligence program, it started August 1967. It was used against Dr. King, used against the Black Panther Party for self-defense. We know Malcolm was assassinated February 21st, 1965. Yes, he was a target of the FBI, but based upon my research, the counterintelligence program started August 1967. But the Black Power movement is targeted by the counterintelligence program in J. Edgar Hoover. So we'll discuss some of that and how was it exposed? What happened? Okay. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, let's correct wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, the 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, Kemet, the 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter. Also, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and sign up for our email newsletter there as well. Okay, if you'd like this type of information, you can support us, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, and at our website, through Cash App, $ the AHN show, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. All right. You can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. I teach the class on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So next class will be Tuesday, March 9th. And we do the classes live, but all the classes are recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over again also, okay? And you can watch from around the world. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And the information is right on the homepage. You can register there. It's regularly $130, on sale $80. It's a 16-hour, 8-week online course that I teach. We usually meet Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, about 50 articles that I reference. As soon as you register, you can watch last week's class. And our guest speaker 2 weeks ago was Dr. David Imhotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Okay, he's the author of this book here, Dr. David Imhotep. You know, he was my guest on the show a couple weeks ago as well. Okay, so let's jump into, I'm going to jump into this first story before we go to break. So we see in Georgia, Republicans are taking aim at African Americans through targeting black churches. Okay, and this is dealing with voting, and they're targeting souls to the poll voting. So there was a big article from the New York Times from March 6, 2021, and we're going to pull this up here on the screen share as well. Calling number is 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a quick question or comment also. So new proposals by the GOP controlled legislature in Georgia have targeted Sunday voting, part of a raft of measures that could reduce the impact of African American voters in the state of Georgia. Okay, so Sundays are always special at St. Philip Monumental AME Church, but in October of 2020, the pews are often most packed by the sermon a bit more urgent and the congregation more animated and eager for what will follow. Piling into church vans and buses, though some prefer to walk, and heading to the polls, the voting polls. Now, voting after Sunday church services, known colloquially as souls to the polls, is a tradition in African American communities across the country. And Pastor Bernard Clark, a minister since 1991, has marshaled the effort at St. Philip for 5 years. His sermons on those Sundays, he said, deliver a message of fellowship, responsibility, and reverence. Pastor Bernard Clark said, it is an opportunity for us to show our voting rights privilege as well as to fulfill what we know that people have died for and people have fought for. Now, Georgia Republicans are proposing new restrictions on weekend voting that could severely curtail one black church's central roles in civic engagement and elections. Georgia Republicans. Now, you would think that they, because they talk about how their policies are going to be so good for African Americans and lift yourself up by your own bootstraps and trickle down economy and smaller government is going to help African Americans and get government out of your life and things like this. Now, Republicans want government in their life when a disaster hits, a hurricane, tornado, a flood. They want government in their life then. And even the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, even though it did not get any votes from Republican senators in the Senate, and it didn't get any, I don't think it got any votes in the House of Representatives the first time around. Maybe one person was asleep and hit the wrong button. But but it gets a lot of support from Republican constituents, and it gets a lot of support from Republican governors as well. Imagine that. So let's go back here. I want to go back here to the article from the Times. Okay, so Georgia Republicans are proposing new restrictions on weekend voting. So instead of them appealing to African Americans based upon their policies, they want to make it harder for us to vote. These new restrictions could severely curtail one of the black church's central roles in civic engagement and elections. Stung by losses in the presidential race and 2 Senate contests, the Georgia State Party, is moving quickly to push through these limits and a raft of other measures aimed directly at suppressing the black turnout that helped Democrats prevail in the critical battleground state of Georgia. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Stand by. We're back from break in a couple of minutes here. All right, let's see here. I had to get ready for this next segment. Stand by. All right, let's see here. Let's go to this other one. Uh, Stand by, everybody. We're back from break in 3 minutes and 2 minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. Here I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, March 8th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, so right before the break, I was talking about this story from the New York Times. In Georgia, Republicans take aim at role of Black churches in elections. This is dealing with the rampant voter suppression taking place in the Peach State as a direct backlash to African Americans coming out and voting for Joe Biden for president and 2 Democrats for the U.S. Senate. Republicans know that in 2022, most likely Stacey Abrams will run for governor again. If she runs for governor again, she will probably win. And they're trying to stop that by changing the rules, putting in new laws. And then also they know that Reverend Raphael Warnock has to run for re-election in 2022 also because he's finishing out the last 2 years of a Senate term. That Senate seat that he won, he's finishing out the last 2 years. So they want to take that Senate seat back as well. So this is the trickery that they are engaging in. Okay, now Bishop Reginald T. Jackson, who oversees all 534 AME churches in Georgia, said the only reason you have these bills is because they lost. The only reason you have these bills is because they lost. What makes it even more troubling than that is there is no other way you can describe this other than racism, and we just need to call it what it is. He's correct. Keep it real. Call it what it is. This is straight up white supremacy and racism. Now, the push for new restrictions in Georgia comes amid a national effort by Republican-controlled state legislatures to impose harsh restrictions on voting access. in states like Iowa, Arizona, and Texas. But the targeting of Sunday voting, the targeting of Sunday voting in new bills that are moving through Georgia's legislature has stirred the most passionate reaction, with critics saying it recalls some of the racist voting laws from the past. Diana Harvey Johnson, who's 74 years old and a former state senator who lives in Savannah, said, "I can remember the first time I went to register. I went to the courthouse by myself, and there was actually a mason jar sitting on the counter. And the woman there asked me how many butter beans were in that jar. How many butter beans were in that jar, suggesting that she needed to guess correctly in order to be allowed to register to vote." Now, this is 74 years old. You still have people alive today that remember voting before the 1965 Voting Rights Act was passed, that is trying to be gutted once again. Okay, Supreme Court is going to hear two cases that could gut the 1965 Voting Rights Act even more. She said, "I had a better chance of winning the Georgia lottery than guess how many butter beans were in that mason jar." But the fact that those kinds of disrespects, and demoralizing, dehumanizing poll taxes, lynchings, burning crosses, and burning down houses, and firing people and putting people in jail just to keep them from voting, that is not that far away in history. This is what I'm trying to explain to people. It ain't that far. You still have people alive, like this sister right here, okay, Miss Johnson, who remembers all this. Okay, that's not that far away. And you have forces trying to take us back in various ways. Okay, you have forces trying to take us back in various ways. But it looks like some people, she goes on to say, but it looks like some people want to revisit that, and that is absolutely unacceptable. Okay, now this is what we're going to do. Shakita, I just sent you a clip from Channel 11 Alive. I want to go to that clip right now. Then we'll go to Roland Martin Unfiltered. That this deals with, now I've shared this information with you before a number of times on this show, because you have to understand history. All right. And the people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. On Sunday's show, we did almost 2 hours dealing with Evanston, Illinois, and their effort to pay some type of reparations to African Americans who dealing with us being victimized for the redlining process and locking us out of buying homes and being able to accumulate wealth through homes and buying property and things like this. Okay. Georgia has a history of racism when it comes to voting. When you look at the runoff election rules in the state of Georgia, the runoff election in Georgia was the runoff election law in Georgia was created specifically to lock African Americans out of statewide political power. And it was championed by a state representative who was a white supremacist segregationist named Denmark Groover, who got this law passed in 1963. Okay. So I want to go to this clip here. This deals with how runoffs arose to limit power of Black voters in Georgia and much of the South, experts say. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
You know, the Republicans aren't shy about it. They're saying this is why we're doing it.
Not
we
that clip.
Just want to win, and we want to win.
Shakita, is the clip I just sent you is in a separate email. It's from 11 Alive. Okay, so just cue that one up. Let me know when we have a queue up. Check the email. Now this article came out November 9th, 2020. And it says, with two upcoming U.S. Senate runoffs, voters in Georgia could decide the balance of power in Washington. Runoffs, though, come with a racially motivated history. So here's a little bit of that history while we get the clip queued up. So the previous law was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. All right, and you're going to have this new law put in place, championed by State Representative Denmark Groover. At the Georgia State Capitol in the 1960s, State Representative Denmark Groover led a charge for runoff elections. A federal report looking at civil rights in America called Denmark Groover a staunch segregationist who pushed for runoffs in Georgia as a way to challenge a growing Black political power. The report reads, quote, support for the majority vote plan reinforced the moderate segregationist position. It did not remove anyone's right to cast a ballot, but it was commonly regarded as hampering African Americans, the stigmatized Black voters. Now, what this law did was, while still allowing the runoff election, okay, the runoff election law that Reverend Raphael Warnock had to go through, okay, and he beat Kelly Loeffler twice. He beat Kelly Loeffler in the November 3rd election and the January 5th runoff election. Now, while this runoff election rule still allowed African Americans to cast a ballot in Georgia, runoffs at the time attempted to make sure candidates representing the white majority, not the interests of African American citizens, would be elected. Quote, the South traditionally was a one-party government, one-party Democrat beginning in the 19th century. But so the Democratic Party is founded in 1828. Okay, just so people understand, Republican Party is not founded to 1854. The South traditionally was a one-party government, one-party Democrat beginning in the 19th century up until the middle of the 20th century. More recently, one-party Republican. And this is after the party realignment, starting with the Lily White movement in 1928, which was an effort by Republicans to push African Americans out of the Republican Party. So we slowly go over to the Democratic Party because they were more receptive in general to our issues and concerns. As voting laws and patterns have shifted, the impact of runoffs may have also changed. All right, let's go to this clip.
Georgia has shifted to the center of the political universe with 2 Senate races.
Process of runoff elections may seem fairly simple, but these contests once served a racially motivated purpose. 11 Alive's Joe Hankey with more for us tonight.
While many Georgia voters may be familiar with runoff elections, they may not be familiar with the history of runoffs in Georgia and across the South. At the Georgia State Capitol in the 1960s, a state representative named Denmark Groover led a charge for runoff elections. A federal report looking at civil rights in America calls Groover a staunch segregationist who pushed for runoffs in Georgia as a way to challenge growing Black political power. And, quote, support for the majority vote plan reinforced the moderate segregationist position. It did not remove anyone's right to cast a ballot, but it was commonly regarded as hampering African Americans, the stigmatized Black voters. While still allowing Black voters to cast a ballot, runoffs at the time made sure candidates representing the white majority, not the interests of Black citizens, would be elected.
They don't function precisely that way anymore, but one has to wonder what function they do have.
Cal Jilson is a political science professor at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. He says runoffs are linked to elections in the South, requiring a candidate to have more than 50% or a majority of votes cast to win an election.
Runoff is an opportunity for the white majority to come together and beat back a challenge from a Black candidate.
Frequently, as you know,
and when lawmakers such as Groover wrote and passed laws requiring runoffs, they did not hide their intentions.
Before anyone was politically correct, people spoke very directly about their sense of race and the importance of maintaining white supremacy. And that's what these electoral rules were intended to do.
Currently, Georgia is only one of 10 states, primarily in the South, using runoffs and primaries, Only Georgia and Louisiana use them for general elections. Jilson views runoffs as outdated election law.
There's less and less reason, and really fewer and fewer states as time goes by that use runoffs.
Okay, so that is from 11 Alive in Georgia, the Atlanta, Georgia area. Check out this article. Runoffs arose to limit power of Black voters in Georgia, much of South, experts say. This is from 11alive.com. So we see this history. So we have to connect this history of, in Georgia, them trying to keep African Americans from having statewide power. We have to connect that to this new effort to have all these new voter restriction laws in the state of Georgia, 253 and 43 state legislatures across the country, but especially in Georgia. All right. All of this is connected and is trying to lock African Americans out of political power. All right. Now, I want to go to this clip here. This is from Roland Martin Unfiltered. So on March 5th, Friday, March 5th, I was a panelist on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm usually a panelist on each Friday. And Roland was speaking with Cliff Albright and Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter, Black Voters Matter. And they were talking about the attack on voting rights in the state of Georgia, especially targeting African Americans. Now, they've launched this campaign dealing with corporate Georgia, where you stand with Georgia voters. And this campaign is calling on corporations in Georgia, Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola, Southern Company, Home Depot, to speak out against these voter restriction laws that are being pushed. Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola, Southern Company, Home Depot, UPS, AFLAC, Georgia Chamber of Commerce, Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, Georgia Black Chamber of Commerce. The day for lukewarm statements from corporations is over. Black voters who invest over $106 billion in the state of Georgia want corporations in Georgia to act by using their influence to stop these anti-democratic and racist discriminatory bills. Okay, and that's that tweet from March 4th, 2021 is from April Albright, the legal director for Black Voters Matter. Now, some people may say, well, why are we trying to get white corporations to speak up for us and things like this? Well, one, we spend tens of billions of dollars with, just in Georgia, $106 billion spent with these corporations. Two, when the back in 2015, when you had the Indiana bathroom bill that passed the state legislature, and it was signed into law by a governor of Indiana named Mike Pence, and Mike Pence went on to become vice president, there was swift backlash from corporate America, and corporations were threatening to cancel conferences in the state of Indiana. They were threatening to NCAA games were either canceled or threatened to be moved or what have you. You had the NBA speaking out. You had Apple, Salesforce.com. You had another number of corporations speaking out, denouncing the Indiana bathroom bill. You had conferences threatening to be canceled, okay, because they felt that what was taking place was wrong. Well, what Cliff Albright and Latasha Brown and other organizations are saying is, well, where's corporate America when it comes to African Americans? Now, some of these same corporations donated money back during the summer 2020 when the George Floyd protests were going on. And everybody, and a lot of people were at home because of COVID-19. So everybody was focused on the protests taking place in the streets, and corporate America were donating. Okay. Well, we need to go from charity to change, and the same corporations that were donating money, they need to speak out about this injustice that's taking place in Georgia. Okay, so I want to go to we're going to go to clip number one. This is dealing with civil rights organizations are asking big business to fight Georgia voter suppression. This is from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
Spoken. You know, the Republicans aren't shy about it. They're saying this is why we're doing it. We simply just want to win, and we want to win at all costs. But this is something that can't be tolerated. And I think that probably by next week, we will see somebody step up and say that we're going to change and invest in something that we see just as important as, you know, maybe the $100 million that we invested last year during the times of Black Lives Matter.
At the end of the day, Michael, again, pressure. You've got to pressure, and you got to use the money.
You know, Roland,
Say,
hey, brother, I agree with them 1,000%.
I think you're playing clip 2.
One of my callers, John.
Shakita, I think you're playing clip 2. Go to clip 1 and start it at the 1941 mark. Okay. Clip 1, rights organizations. That's from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Start at the 1941 mark, and then just play it when you have it queued up. Okay, just start playing it when you have it queued up. Okay, so now this also ties into an article from Reuters. Okay, there was an article from Reuters that we talked about on our show Friday, and all this ties together. And this deals with civil rights organizations, civil rights groups are urging, civil rights groups urge companies to join fight against Georgia voting restrictions. Okay. And this deals with leveraging our economics to enforce our politics, leveraging our economics to enforce our politics. And this also deals with a form of economic withdrawal, or what I call economic guerrilla warfare. Civil rights groups urge companies to join fight against Georgia voting restrictions. Now, this article here, this is from March 5th, 2021. Voting rights groups are calling on companies such as Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, to oppose efforts by Republican lawmakers in Georgia to enact sweeping restrictions on voting access in the battleground state of Georgia. Okay.
Judges that say they were for racial equity, those that say that they're standing with the Black community, that actually are making millions of dollars off our hard-earned dollars, that in our work, that this is an issue that is not even just rooted in racism, but anti-democracy. And so that's why we're calling the question. We're calling the question, you know, Pete Seeger had a song in the 60s that they used to sing, and it used to say, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We're actually putting that question. Which side are you on? Because this isn't, to me, this isn't even a partisan issue. It should not be a partisan issue. This is a basic believe and support democracy to stand with us.
Cliff, I always tell people, if you want to change anything in America, follow the money. Follow the money. And for all these white folks out there who are sitting here, want to be silent on this, guess what? We don't have to buy companies' products. We can use other products and also put pressure on their suppliers and others. And so bottom line is this here. If Republicans want to play this game, okay, we can play it too. Because Dr. King, on April 3rd, 1968, and I keep telling people this, y'all got to go listen to the whole speech. Stop listening to the bottom of the speech when he said, I've been to the mountaintop. He talked about redistribute the pain. He talked about economic reciprocity. He talked about what needs to happen. In fact, it was interesting, he mentioned Coca-Cola in that particular speech. I got lots of friends at Coca-Cola, but here's the deal. This is where we need companies like Coke, like Delta, like every major company in Georgia to make it clear, y'all messing with the money if y'all mess with the vote.
That's right. And I want to point out, because I'm glad you raised the point about following the money, because at the end of the day, it's not just that these companies have been silent on these issues. These companies are actually complicit in these issues because they've been giving donations. They've been giving political donations to some of these same legislators that are pushing this anti-voting, this anti-democracy, this anti-blackness. they've been giving them donations over the years. And so it's not just that they've been on the sidelines, they've actually already been in the game. They've actually been complicit in this process. And so what we're asking them to do, and it's a shame really, that we even have to resort to this, because at the end of the day, we're people, who aren't in favor of this role of money in politics, right? We're people that we would love to see campaign finance reform, right? We'd love to see things like public financing. We don't want to see, these elected officials either at the city, state, or federal level spending all the time on the phone making donation calls, right? So we don't want to see this corruptive influence of money in politics. But guess what? As long as they're playing in the game, then they need to be playing on the side of democracy. They need to be playing on the side of Black voters that have helped to save this democracy. They need to be playing on sides, like King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. That's the side that they need to be leaning towards. But right now, they're leaning towards the side where they are funding the very people that are trying to take our votes away. And so we are following the money. We're putting the pressure on these companies. We've got actions on our website. You can go to our website. You can go to our social media, Black Voters MTR. That's Facebook, Twitter, IG. And you can follow our actions and go to our page. You can make the phone calls yourselves. We got the phone numbers there for the CEO of Coke. Everybody have a Coke and a smile. Let's make some phone calls to the CEO of Coke, to UPS, to Delta. We got all those phone numbers right there. I called up Coca-Cola today to try to talk to the CEO, and I got a staff member, an employee, who no matter what I said, all she kept doing was reading their official statement. It was actually kind of insulting. And we believe that the more people get involved and make these phone calls and they engage, they bump heads up against this type of resistance and negligence, then that's going to make people be even more motivated and get people even more involved. And so we got all that information on our website, on our social media. Everybody listening to this right now has a role to play. Everybody we touch, we want to turn into an organizer.
Put the graphic back up. And so, first of all, you have on that Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola, Southern Company, Home Depot, UPS, Aflac, Georgia Chamber of Commerce, Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, Georgia Black Chamber of Commerce. Let's deal right there with Southern Company. They spend a lot of money at Black events like Essence and others. All the companies on there, what companies have y'all gotten a response directly from?
Let me say this. Let me say one word about the Southern Company. What's interesting is that Southern Company, actually is the largest funder of the GOP of Republican legislators in the state of Georgia. And so here it is, a company that we are literally giving our hard-working money to, and they're actually supporting this side that have been coming out with legislation centered around the big lie to actually disenfranchise us. That out of all of those companies on there, what I do think is one of the most egregious is the Southern Company that literally provide the Southern Company, Georgia Power, Alabama Power, those power companies. Matter of fact, even if you're looking at this and you're not in the state of Georgia, a portion of your resources, Alabama Power, is a part of the Southern Company. And so we've got to use and leverage our power that we hold these people accountable. That any of these companies, none of these companies, personally, I know that there's been some phone calls that have been made. There's a lot of activity I know going around and concern. We haven't heard directly from those companies, but the bottom line is, if you look at the ad, we're asking the question, calling the question. We're saying, will you stand with the voters of Georgia? That should be a slam dunk. This is not an issue where we're trying to literally take the company down. What we're saying is, you have the opportunity in this moment to actually stand with the community that actually supports you, that literally works, that we have workers that work with you, that actually provide even management and even serve on your board. So if you look at the ad, that should be a slam dunk. There should have been all kinds of not only statements, but really powerful phone calls that said, we're standing with you. Maybe you didn't know it, but we're actually for voting rights. The silence in itself says a lot.
Cliff, final comment.
Yeah, we just want everybody to get involved. At the end of the day, this is the deal. It seems daunting, but we know that we're going to win. It was daunting 2 years ago when they stole an election from us in Georgia, and people said, "Oh, what are you going to do? How are you going to get Black voters to come out?" And 2 years later, what we do, we shock the country because Black voters came out in big numbers. So what we've proven is we can out-organize them, y'all. There's no question. That's why they're so mad. That's why they're big mad, because at the end of the day, we out-organize them. We out-organize them in the election, and we're going to out-organize them on this, because at the end of the day, can't stop, won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
All right. Folks, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Okay, so Shakita, I want to go to clip number 2 from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Clip number 2 started at the 30:26 mark. Okay. Now, just so because you got somebody on here asking this question, doesn't know how to use Google. Y'all could have done a Google search. You could have read this yourself. This article is from February 23rd, 2016. Associated Press exclusive. Black Lives Matter opens up about its finances. This is from February 23rd. Okay. You could have Googled this yourself. So I don't know why you asked me questions like this. But anyway, let's go to this next clip, Shakita. Thanks.
High economic pressure on these various corporations. Okay, and we saw this take place.
Is that at the 30:26 mark?
1960.
Like what was just spoken, the Republicans aren't shy about it. They're saying this is why we're doing it. We simply just want to win, and we want to win at all costs. But this is something that can't be tolerated. And I think that probably by next week, we will see somebody step up and say that we're going to change and invest in something that we see just as important as, maybe the $100 million that we invested last year during the times of Black Lives Matter.
At the end of the day, Michael, again, pressure. You've got to pressure, and you got to use the money.
Roland, hey, brother, I agree with them 1,000%. As one of my callers, John, says from Detroit, look, remember last Friday on this show, I said we have to leverage our economics to enforce our politics. And I talked about FEC.gov, Federal Elections Commission, and looking and see which corporations donate to members of the House of Representatives and U.S. Senate. Brother, this is right on time right here. And I think we may have to probably implement this strategy. This is redistributing the pain. We probably have to implement this strategy also to push H.R. 1 through the Senate, because they're not 60 votes in the Senate for H.R. 1, and also the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Okay, now we know both those bills passed the House of Representatives Thursday night, but there's not 60 votes in the Senate for this. But if we connect all this together, some of these same corporations came out to donate money during the George Floyd protests and things like this. Okay, well, now where do you stand on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? Okay, where do you stand on H.R. 1? We spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year collectively with these various corporations. So it's time to leverage our economics to enforce our politics. And, I want to find out from them what the next steps are, because it may take nationwide economic pressure on these various corporations. Okay. And we saw this take place, back in 1960, the Nashville economic boycott in 1960, which was the economic boycott of the downtown business district, which broke the back of segregation. And African Americans up north who could go to the Woolworths and Kresge's and things like this, they started boycotting the same corporations up north that the brothers and sisters were boycotting down south, and it spread to 59 cities. And it broke the back of segregation in Nashville, Tennessee. So we have to take a page from history. We have to listen to the entire approximately 43 minutes of I've Been to the Mountaintop, April 3rd, 1968. I talked about redistributing the pain last week on your show last Friday. And lastly, Dr. King mentioned Coca-Cola, Wonder Bread, Heart's Bread, and Phil Test Milk in that speech. Those were corporations he was talking about economic withdrawal from. And he said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. This is exactly what he was talking about.
And again, folks, what has to happen is also why Black media matters, because we're going to stay focused on this consistently. We told you earlier this week, go to my iPad, this right here, this is what they have in the bill. Limit Sunday voting to one optional Sunday in each county. Reduce ballot drop boxes by requiring them to be located inside early voting locations, meaning you can only access them when the early voting location is open. And keep in mind, the Ohio Secretary of State, lobbyists, they want to do the exact same thing there. This is the Republican playbook across the country. Require a driver's license number, state ID number, or copy of photo ID to vote absentee. Set a deadline to request absentee ballots 11 days before Election Day. Disqualify provisional ballots cast in the wrong precinct. ban outside funding of elections from nonprofit organizations, prohibits governments from mailing unsolicited absentee ballot applications, creates instant runoff voting for military and overseas voters, schedule runoffs for 4 weeks after Election Day rather than the current 9 weeks.
Pause it right there. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's dealing with the state of Georgia. So it's a number of different articles here. Read this one from NBC News. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation. We're going to keep going for a few more minutes on my social media platform. So all these articles, I can't get through all the information in them, but I want you to go read these articles in their entirety. This shows what's going on in Georgia and around the country. The Georgia Republicans are pushing dozens of election integrity bills. Black voters are the target, rights groups say. As the battle over voter rights plays out in legislatures across the country, advocates say federal protections are more necessary than ever. Now, this article is from March 8th, 2021. Okay, same day as International Women's Day. And we'll talk about International Women's Day here in just a minute. So on Monday, now check this out. Now, I talked about this last Friday on the show. After 15 years allowing voters to cast absentee ballots without excuses, Georgia Republicans say the practice has got to go. Okay, we're out of time here. Speaking of got to go, we got to go. Right now, it's correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. We'll kind of forever stay tuned for Pastor Greg Davis. Keep watching on YouTube and Facebook. We'll keep going. All right, talk to y'all tomorrow night. Peace. Okay, let's keep going. So the no excuse mail-in ballot law in Georgia that passed the Republican-dominated state legislature in Georgia in 2005. Republicans have had that law for 15 years. But because African Americans came out basically in record numbers and voted using mail-in ballots and got Joe Biden in the White House and got rid of the 2 Republican senators, now the same law that Republicans were using to vote mail-in, no excuse absentee ballots, the same law that they were using for 15 years, now they want to change it because we learned the law and we're using it and we used it to our advantage. Now all of a sudden they want to change the law. This is what this is about. Okay, so after 15 years of allowing voters to cast absentee ballots without excuses, Georgia Republicans say the practice has got to go. On Monday, March 8th, the Republican-controlled Georgia State Senate passed a package of legislation that would, among other things, limit mail-in voting primarily to Georgians who are elderly, disabled, or out of town on election day. One of dozens of restrictive election-related measures under consideration in state legislatures. Now, supporters of the measures, who include allies to former President Donald Trump, the traitor-in-chief, Benedict Donald, and those who stood up to his bogus allegations of fraud after Joe Biden upset decades of Republican dominance to win the state, say the bills are common sense election security efforts. Now, Democrats, voting rights advocates, and civil rights groups say something else is going on. Quote, it's pathetically obvious to anyone paying attention that when Trump lost the election and Georgia flipped control of the U.S. Senate to Democrats shortly after, Republicans got the message that they were in a political death spiral. They were in a political death spiral, said State Representative Renita Shannon, a Democrat from Decatur, Georgia, and Roland interviewed her, I think it was Friday before last, because he interviewed her when I was on the show. Representative Shannon and Representative Cannon, Roland interviewed from the Georgia State Legislature, and they were talking about what Republicans are doing in Georgia. So she's a Democrat from Decatur, Representative Renita Shannon. She said during a floor debate over the Republican proposals in Georgia last week, She said, and now they are doing anything they can do to silence the voices of Black and brown voters, specifically because they largely powered these wins. Now, the Senate bill and other restrictive voting laws passed by one chamber of Georgia's General Assembly are expected to end up in conference committee, where lawmakers will seek to reconcile competing legislation into a final piece of legislation. Now, grassroots organizers say Georgia, which just elected 2 Democrats to the U.S. Senate, flipping the seats from red to blue, is ground zero for a movement happening across the country. Ground zero for a movement happening across the country. Okay, I would say just as Selma, Alabama was ground zero for the fight for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Georgia is ground zero for voter restriction bills for 2021 and 2022. State Republicans have introduced at least 253 restrictive voting bills in 43 states, according to the Brennan Center for Justice at the New York University School of Law. State Republicans have introduced at least 253 restrictive voting bills in 43 states. And because they control the majority of state legislatures across the country, at least some of the proposals are likely to pass. In the fall, state Republicans will also control far more of the redistricting process than Democrats, and experts say lawmakers could easily gerrymander Republican House majorities. Okay, so read the rest of this article here from NBC News, March 8th, 2021. Georgia Republicans are pushing dozens of election integrity bills. Black voters are the target, rights groups say. Now, I want to go to this clip here. This is from NBC News Now. This is from March 8th, 2021. Georgia lawmakers battling over proposed changes to voting laws. NBC News, Jane Timm, Timm, reports on Georgia's state legislature, where Republicans are pushing through several election bills, from early voting hours to voters identifying who they are on their mailed ballots. Okay, let's back this up. Okay, let's go to this clip here.
The relief bill isn't the only issue making headlines in Washington. President Joe Biden signed an executive order Sunday calling on federal agencies to expand voting access. He made the announcement in virtual remarks at the Martin and Coretta Scott King Unity Breakfast.
Today, on the anniversary of Bloody Sunday, I'm signing an executive order to make it easier for eligible voters to register to vote and improve access to voting. Every eligible voter should be able to vote and have that vote counted.
The president's executive order comes as fights over voting rights and proposed restrictive voting measures are playing out in state legislatures all across the country. NBCNews.com senior reporter Jane Timm joins us now with more on this. So, Jane, you took a deep dive into Georgia's state legislature, where Republicans are pushing through several election bills. So what exactly is going on there?
So what you're seeing in Georgia is it's a really interesting microcosm here. You're seeing dozens of restrictive laws going after everything from drop boxes to early voting hours to how voters verify who they are on their mail ballots. And you're seeing a really intense effort to restrict the electorate in Georgia. Because a lot of these laws would have a disproportionate effect on minority voters, who are a growing population in Georgia, and really fueled some of these victories that were huge for Democrats.
Yeah, so Jane, help us break down both sides here. How are critics of these proposed bills in Georgia reacting?
You know, critics, everyone from voting rights advocates to civil rights groups to Democrats in the state, say this is just blatant voter suppression. Georgia has had no excuse to absentee mail voting for 15 years. It was a really popular way to vote for Republicans, and Democrats embraced it in this last election, make a big stink about it. And now suddenly they need to restrict the vote and add these security measures that they really didn't have to do before. And obviously, Georgia was huge for Democrats, and Democrats say, look, you just don't want to see us win. That's why you want to change the voting rights. But I think it's important to note this isn't just politics. Obviously, there is a disproportionate effect on voters of color. It can change who gets to vote.
Jane, give us the bigger picture here. Nationwide, if these bills become laws, how might they impact access to the ballot box for some Americans?
Yeah, so what we're seeing in Georgia, we're seeing all over the country. 43 states are considering restrictive voting laws. There's hundreds of proposed laws, and they're really similar. So when I write about Arizona and Georgia, I'm often writing about the exact same sort of peculiar piece of legislation. If you pass a bunch of these laws, and Republicans, of course, do control more state legislatures than Democrats, you're going to see it harder to vote. You're also going to see a whole lot of litigation as advocates try and challenge these laws in the courts.
All right, Jane, Tim, thanks for staying on top of it. We appreciate it.
Okay, so that's from NBC News. Now, if you check out the article here that I posted, Georgia Republicans are pushing dozens of election integrity bills. Black voters are the target, rights groups say. That clip is in this article, so you can check out this article in its entirety. All right, so we'll talk about this some more on Tuesday's show. I just don't have time to get through everything right now. Okay, I want to go quickly here to this next story. We talked about this a little bit. I think we talked about it a little bit Sunday. So Saturday, the U.S. Senate, Democrats in the Senate, I should say, because no help from Republicans. Democrats in the Senate passed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. And it's expected that it will pass the House of Representatives on Tuesday. Now, the Senate passed the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package Saturday, capping off a marathon overnight session after Democrats resolved internal clashes that threatened to derail President Joe Biden's top legislative priority. And I want to pull up this next clip here and get that queued up. So the far-reaching legislation includes $1,400 stimulus checks, $300 per week jobless, $300 per week jobless benefits, $300 a week jobless benefits through the summer, a child allowance of up to $3,600 for 1 year, and let me pull up. I want to actually go to this article to show it to you. Do we have the link? Just 1 second here. Okay, Senate passes $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, including $1,400 stimulus checks with no Republican support. Let me pull this up here just a second. What I'm going to do, we'll go to this. I want to go to this clip here from Alex Witt on MSNBC. Senate passes $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill with no GOP support. Let's go to this clip.
With you first. So where do things stand now on this COVID relief bill? Can senators take off now and go home and get some rest?
Yes, actually. We've started to see some senators make their way home, heading to the airports, leaving within the last few minutes. And as you said, the next steps here really come down to the House, which we just heard from Leader Steny Hoyer, who said that they're expecting to bring a vote on Tuesday. He released a statement saying that they are going to bring this up and expressing confidence that the changes that were made within the Senate version of this bill are not going to be difficult to then continue on to pass again to bring to Biden's desk. And we also heard from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer just in the last few minutes saying that he spoke spoke with President Biden, that he said that they would get this done, that they would get this through, and noting that they were confident they've been in close touch with members of the House to move things forward and have this expedited before that March 14th deadline. So no real surprises here in the final vote tally either. It came out to 50 to 49 to pass this legislation, and in part because Senator Dan Sullivan was missing, had a family emergency, and had to leave. So that vote then didn't need that Senate tie-breaking vote from the president of the Senate, Vice President Kamala Harris. It passed strictly on party lines. There was no GOP support at the end of the day. But moving forward, that Democrats are expecting and confident that they will be able to move this through within the next few days in order to get it signed into law.
Okay. Thank you for that. Again, wrapping up what we've seen over these many, many hours, but notably just in this last hour. Moving on to the White House with Monica Alba. Have we heard anything from the White House on this?
No official reaction yet, Alex, but we do expect President Biden to make some formal remarks now that this has passed. He has been really stressing the urgency of the moment and the need for this relief now. And even though, of course, it does have to go back to the House, it has to be passed there before it gets to his desk for signature. This is something that President Biden is going to be able to tout, we expect, as really his first legislative priority victory and the number one thing on his agenda. This is something that he campaigned on. It's something he promised the American people as president-elect. And after he was sworn in January, he said he was really going to spend the bulk of the first 100 days on getting this accomplished. And it all seems it's heading in that direction. And it really coincides. You have to take and zoom out and think about the symbolism of the fact that we are nearing the 1-year anniversary of when this was declared a national emergency, the coronavirus pandemic, and how it has affected so many millions of Americans. So the fact that the president is going to be speaking to that, of course, acknowledging all of the death and devastation and grieving families, and now he's going to be able to go out and say, I'm delivering some of the relief and help. That's what we expect to hear from him a little bit later today. And then he's going to be taking that message on the road next week. He's going to be visiting some vaccination centers for veterans, for example. And then he's also going to be going to Baltimore, Maryland, to meet with some of the CEOs of Merck and Johnson & Johnson to tout their new emphasis on trying to get that vaccine produced more quickly and out. So you're going to see the White House now pivot to be able to say, here's what's in the American Rescue Plan. Here's how we're hoping it's going to be used very quickly before they start to then look to other things they want to do on Capitol Hill, such as potentially infrastructure and immigration. But today you can expect to see President Biden very pleased with this outcome, even though we know he was up late last night working the phones, talking to Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, trying to get Democrats to be unified. As we saw that vote take much, much longer than expected yesterday, it seems he was able to do that. And so now the conversation really shifts, the White House says, to how this is going to be implemented. And you didn't see any Republican senators support it. Their response to that is that there was some bipartisan support among Republican mayors and governors. And so you may see some of those people in the next couple of weeks alongside the president talking about how it can help their local communities. But that will be another question for the White House that they have not yet really answered, which is the fact that they weren't able to get any Republican senators on board with this, even though they were able to pass it with this very, very narrow majority that did not ultimately need the tie-breaking vote of Vice President Kamala Harris, Alex.
Okay, so that's from Weekends with Alex Witt. That is from Weekends with Alex Witt on MSNBC. And let's see, that clip is which one is that? Senate passes $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill with no GOP support. That is from March 6, 2021, Saturday, March 6, 2021, from Weekends with Alex Witt. And we'll post the clip here so you can watch that one. And that is from MSNBC.com. Okay. All right. Next, I want to talk briefly here about International Women's Day. International Women's Day. So there was an article from newsone.com that I saw dealing with International Women's Day, and I saw posts throughout the day dealing with this. I saw some posts from Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I saw numerous posts talking about International Women's Day. Let's see here. Where is? I'll pick this up. But I saw one from news1.com called Choose to Challenge. Choose to Challenge. On International Women's Day, equity is more than a call to action. Equity is more than a call to action. And I posted this article also on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. So you can read it there as well. And they have this, a lot of people were commenting on this, what is a picture, the thumbnail picture, it has it's a picture of African-American women. It doesn't show up here in the article, but oh yeah, it does show up here. Okay, so a lot of people were commenting on this beautiful picture here of these sisters. So let me, so I want to go to this article next year. All right. Just 1 second here. And this article also deals with some of the history of International Women's Day. But International Women's Day marks the perfect moment to advocate for gender equity, where women are still fighting for basic human rights, access to education, eliminating the wage gap, and reproductive justice. Now, this is written by Sharice Frazier for news1.com. So International Women's Day on March 8th marks a day of honoring women and the pursuit of heightening the social, economic, and political achievements of women globally. This year's participants are marking their celebration using the hashtag Choose to Challenge, and International Women's Day, hashtag International Women's Day. So on the International Women's Day website, and I was on their website earlier today, a challenge, they say a challenged world is an alert world. We can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. Now, International Women's Day first began in 1911 and moved to March 8th in 1913. The United Nations began observing the day in 1975 and added themed celebrations in 1996. With challenges presented by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, many are opting for digital-based celebrations across the globe. However, others feel it is the perfect time to advocate for gender equity, where women are still fighting for basic human rights, access to education, and eliminating the wage gap and reproductive justice. Now, a new study by the accounting firm Fresh Books polled women business owners in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, which found that women-owned businesses take 3 times longer to recover from the financial setbacks brought by COVID-19. Women-owned businesses take 3 times longer to recover from the financial setbacks by COVID-19. Nearly 60% of women polled said it will take them longer than 6 months to recover their businesses, in comparison to 47% of men. Now, on Monday, March 8th, poor and low income residents of West Virginia, California, Florida, Iowa, Georgia, Missouri, Alabama, and Michigan, in coalition with the Poor People's Campaign, faith leaders, legislators, and workers' unions and workers' unions to advocate for the $15 minimum wage hike. The current federal minimum wage stands at $7.25 an hour. It's been at that point for 12 years and remains an important challenge in the movement for wage equity. Women, Black communities, and other communities of color are disproportionately affected in states that refuse to offer a living wage. It contributes to the cycle of poverty where women are already at a disadvantage due to the wage gap. And then we also know that so when we talk about Black women's equal pay day, and I deal with Black women's equal pay day each year, and we know that Black women will lose out on almost $1 million in their working lifetime. Okay, there was an article from blackenterprise.com from 2019 that's extremely important. Now, this ties into the racial wealth gap. Black women lose out on, man, goddamn, why they have so many ads? Hold on just a second. Okay, Black women lose out over $1 million in their careers thanks to the wage gap. Now, this is from October 2019. October 2019. Black women lose out over $1 million in their careers thanks to the wage gap. And in this article, it talks about, let's see here, a Black woman will lose out on $946,000, $946,120 over a 40-year career if she continues to make 61 cents on the dollar that every white man earns due to the wage gap. Analysis by the National Women's Law Center shows. The average over a 40-year working career, okay, the average African American woman will lose out $946,120. Now, assuming she and her white non-Hispanic male counterpart began work at age 20, an African American woman would have to work until she's age 86 to catch up to what a white non-Hispanic man has made by age 60. Okay, now this deals with the racial wage gap, but this then ties into the racial wealth gap for African American households, African American families, African American households. You're talking about the average African American woman losing out on almost $1 million. So it's important for people to understand this is money that she earned, but because African American women are paid 67 cents on the dollar, 62 cents on the dollar, depending upon which year you're talking about. She did the work, but she wasn't paid equitably, which then impacts all of the African American community. So the National Women's Law Center found that Black women face even larger pay disparity in certain states. In the state of Louisiana, Black women are paid on average 47 cents for every dollar that white non-Hispanic male counterparts make, which is the worst state for Black women's wage equality. Okay. And then we see that they talk about African American women with PhDs. Advanced education among Black women has not been shown to lower the wage gap. In fact, the gap is largest for the most educated Black women. Doctorate degree holders who are African American women tend to make 60% of what their white male counterparts make. Doctorate degree holders who are African American women tend to make 60% of what their white male counterparts make. Black women have the highest student loan debt of any racial or ethnic group. For an undergraduate degree, the average Black woman carries nearly $30,400 in debt compared to $19,500 for white men. The wage gap lessens Black women's ability to pay off educational debt, creating an additional barrier to saving money that could be used to buy a home, start a business, or used for emergencies. So all this is tied together, and this is tied into the racial wealth gap. Okay, now let's go back to I want to go back to the one from news1.com dealing with International Women's Day. Okay, so women, Black communities, and other communities of color are disproportionately affected in states that refuse to offer a living wage. It contributes to the cycle of poverty where women are already at a disadvantage due to the wage gap, as I just showed you. Quote, nationally, more than 140 million poor and low income people live in the United States, or 43% of the country's population. And that was before the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, nationally, more than 140 million people, more than 140 million poor and low income people live in the United States, or 43% of the country's population. And that was before the COVID-19 pandemic. A statement from the Poor People's Campaign reads, quote, the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, that's Reverend William Barber III, okay, with organizing committees in 45 states, is building a moral fusion movement to address the 5 interlocking injustices of systemic racism. Let's look at this. The 5 interlocking injustices of systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy and militarism, and a distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism. Okay. Refugees International recently launched a call to action for the Biden-Harris administration to focus their efforts around protecting, empowering, and assisting marginalized women and girls, the globe, or I think it's supposed to be girls around the globe. Their efforts center around policy and legislation, which includes domestic and global policies and commitments directed broadly on gender equity, and women include a focus on the needs and rights of displaced women and girls, and policies and commitments directed broadly on refugee protection and humanitarianism include a gendered analysis of their impact on the rights and interests of women and girls. Okay, so check out the rest of this here. This is from news1.com, written by Sharice Frazier. Hashtag choose the challenge on International Women's Day. Equity is more than a call to action. All right, so you can check that out also. All right, African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. And we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also visit Working with John Ray, workingwithjohnray.com. John Ray has a concept called, he has financial strategies, and he'll tell you about, and he has a video also at his website, workingwithjohnray.com. He deals with income adjustment, income readjusting, but visit his website, workingwithjohnray.com. All right. There was one other, okay, lastly, because I got to get out of here. There was this last article, the rest of the stuff we have to get to tomorrow. There's more dealing with Georgia I want to get to. We'll talk about the Georgia Senate, but we have to do that Tuesday. This last story. So March 8th is not just International Women's Day. March 8th is also the anniversary of the counterintelligence program being exposed, COINTELPRO. And it was exposed March 8th, 1971. March 8th, 1971. The counterintelligence program was exposed. Let's see here. Okay. March 8th, 1971. So there was a article from the Zen Education Project. Okay, I was reading that today, and there was also one that I saw from. I was going back and looking. There was one from New York Times as well, dealing with this. But if we look at the one from the Zen Education Project, on March 8th, 1971, a cab driver, a daycare provider, and two professors broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and stole more than 1,000 classified documents that they then mailed anonymously to several U.S. newspapers. Okay, and let's pull up this article here. Let's pull this up from the Zen Education Project, dealing with this day in history. Okay, March 8, 1971, FBI's COINTELPRO is exposed. So the way the counterintelligence program was exposed is that these activists broke in to the FBI office and stole these files and released it to the media. So they broke into this FBI office and stole more than 1,000 classified documents that they then mailed anonymously to several U.S. newspapers. They were members of the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. The Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. They selected the night of the fight of the century, the boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, March 8, 1971, when most people would be glued to their radios. The documents revealed the FBI's counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, which was a series of covert and often illegal activity. The FBI conducted surveillance, infiltration, discrediting activists, discrediting members of the civil rights movement, and the disruption of domestic political organizations, including actions that led to murder. Okay, so they have a interview here. They have a segment from Democracy Now! That talks about this as well. There was also a movie that came out. They have the trailer for a movie that deals with how the counterintelligence program was exposed. Now they have an excerpt they have one document here that was revealed. On December 7th, 1955, the FBI's mobile office began forwarding information on the bus boycott to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. The special agent in charge of the office reports that someone, probably a member of the Montgomery Police Department, had been assigned to find derogatory information on Dr. King. Okay, now this is December 7th, 1955. The Citizens Commission members involved in the break-in were never caught, nor revealed their names until 2014. In 2015, a documentary film called 1971 was released on the case. All right. Now, as far okay, so check out the rest of this. They have the trailer there for that movie. March 8th, 1971, FBI's COINTELPRO exposed. This is from the Zen Education Project. Now, there was a article from the New York Times that I was looking at today as well, dealing with this history and how all of this was exposed. So there's an article from January 7th, 2014. And let's see, let's flip over to this one here. Burglars who took on FBI abandoned shadows. Burglars who took on FBI abandoned shadows. This is from January 7, 2014 by Mark Mazzetti. The perfect crime is far easier to pull off when nobody's watching. So on a night nearly 43 years ago, while Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier bludgeoned each other over 15 rounds in a televised title bout viewed by millions around the world, burglars took a lockpick and a crowbar and broke into a Federal Bureau of Investigation office in a suburb of Philadelphia, making off with nearly every document inside. Okay, they were never caught, and the stolen documents that they mailed anonymously to newspapers were the first trickle of what would become a flood of revelations about extensive spying and dirty tricks operations by the FBI against dissident groups. The burglary in Media, Pennsylvania on March 8, 1971 is a historical echo today as disclosures of the former National Security Agency contractor Edward J. Snowden have cast another unflattering light on government spying and opened a national debate about the proper limits of government surveillance. Let's see here. Okay, so the burglars had until now maintained a vow of silence about their roles in the operation. They were content in knowing that their actions had dealt the first significant blow to an institution that had amassed enormous power and prestige during J. Edgar Hoover's lengthy tenure as director of the FBI. When you talk to people outside the movement about what the FBI was doing, nobody wanted to believe it, said one of the burglars, Keith Forsyth, who is finally going public about his involvement. Quote, there was only one way to convince people that it was true, and that was to get it in their handwriting. There was only one way to convince people that it was true, and that was to get it in their handwriting. Now, Keith Forsyth, in 2014, now 63 years old, and other members of the group can no longer be prosecuted for what happened that night. And they agreed to be interviewed before the release of a book written by one of the first journalists to receive the stolen documents. The author, Betty Metzger, a former reporter for the Washington Post, spent years sifting through the FBI's voluminous case file on the episode and persuaded 5 of the 8 men and women who participated in the break-in to end their silence. Okay. So unlike Edward Snowden, who downloaded hundreds of thousands of digital NSA files, the media burglars did their work the 20th century way. They cased the FBI office for months, wore gloves as they packed the papers into suitcases, and loaded the suitcases into getaway cars. When the operation was over, they dispersed. Some remained committed to anti-war causes, while others, like John and Bonnie Raines, R-A-I-N-E-S, decided that the risky burglary would be their final act of protest against the Vietnam War and other government actions before they moved on with their lives. Okay, so read the rest of this. This is a fascinating story here. There are other articles dealing with this as well from around 2014 when they was talking about this movie coming out. Burglars who took on FBI abandoned shadows. Now, because of them breaking into the FBI and stealing these files and releasing these files to the newspapers, this is how we found out about the counterintelligence program. This is how, so the FBI didn't just come out and admit it out of the kindness of their hearts. They were exposed. This is how we found out about the counterintelligence program and the surveillance that was being done on civil rights organizations and Black Power organizations, etc. All right. Hey, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. If you donate through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN show, SHOW, and it'll come up and it'll say Michael and it has my picture there. And be sure to register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so it meets on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as soon as you register, you can watch last week's class and the week before that, when our guest speaker was Dr. David Imhotep, author of the book, First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. I just posted the link here for you to register, or you could do it at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. Thanks for tuning in.